third letter from the future, a new age of enlightenment and the future of consciousness and freedom. In the previous two letters, we explored two distinct avenues that laid the foundation for a new moral framework. Through time travel, we discovered that the ethical law of free will is essential for this technology to function successfully. This revelation was not entirely unexpected, as free will proved to be the basis of the long-lasting peace we ultimately achieved across the planet. By integrating insights from near-death experiences, our theologians were able to seamlessly merge these two perspectives. Remarkably, this synthesis did not necessarily repudiate existing religious teachings. On the contrary, it illuminated the evolution of consciousness itself. We developed a renewed reverence for the souls who authored our ancient scriptures, recognizing that having no more than the guidance of their own spirit, they were able to articulate profound truths. While we acknowledge that some writings led to tragic consequences, this, too, appears to be an inherent part of humanity's evolving journey. This new understanding, rooted in the realization that freedom is essential for the spirit within each individual to fully manifest, became the hallmark of the most significant paradigm shift we experienced. The bone of contention between science and religion ceased to exist, as spiritual enlightenment became possible only through new scientific discoveries. This period marked the end of certain pseudo-scientific philosophies that had emerged from distorted conclusions drawn during what you know as the Age of Reason. At the onset of the scientific revolution, the idea of God remained relevant and was reflected in Romanticism. Even Charles Darwin did not claim that God did not exist. He was a theist who believed in God as the ultimate lawgiver. Two other renowned scientists who shared this perspective were Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. The pseudoscience that eventually faded into obscurity began to take root during Darwin's time. It has been observed that few scientists have dominated human thought in the second half of the 19th century more than Darwin and Marx. As we discussed in a previous letter, Karl Marx had a deep disdain for religious thought. Ignoring Darwin's theistic beliefs, Marx instead used On the Origin of Species as a supposed scientific basis to argue against the existence of God. From that moment in history, despite the fact that many great scientists remained theists, Marx's atheistic perspective took hold and spread, along with his other disastrous political views. Even though Marxism failed in every instance, it still spread throughout the West under the guise of postmodernism. As prescribed by the Marxist advocate Antonio Gramsci in his prison notebooks in 1929, the only way for the communist political system to overthrow the West was to initiate a long, slow march into every institution. First, universities indoctrinate students who will then move into every institution of influence, such as government, entertainment, journalism, business, and philosophy itself, to ensure the perpetuity of the Marxist ideology. Once the scientific community could no longer deny the persistence of consciousness after the death of the body, confirmed using its own methods, it became easy to distinguish the true scientists within every scientific institution. Those who had initially resisted this discovery were forced to concede, finding themselves on the losing side of the debate among their peers. This profound shift in worldview sparked a surge of new scientific advancements, reminiscent of earlier eras when groundbreaking theories and inventions flourished. Ultimately, after a period of rigorous scientific corroboration on a planetary scale, a new form of producing energy became a reality. To further explain how the age of spiritual enlightenment spread across the planet, its influence took hold, because it presented an overarching framework that encourages people from all walks of life and incorporate their existing beliefs. Only those whose doctrines demanded the eradication of others struggled to accept it. Similarly, religions that used ancient scriptures as justification for territorial claims found it difficult to embrace this new enlightenment. Resolving these conflicts took time, but eventually, peace began to take root through the realization that ancient scriptures were written by human beings inspired by God, rather than by God himself. It became increasingly clear that for the Spirit to fully manifest God's intention on earth, every individual and every faith must be included. God is not a dictator. Only through the spirit of every individual can we understand God's true intent. On the other hand, those who perceived God as a dictator often believe they must impose divine will through authoritarian rule. However, this is just as disastrous as a civilization that rejects God and suppresses religious knowledge altogether. Peace and freedom can only manifest when a critical mass of individuals adopts a more responsible approach to both thought and action. This transformation did not come about through trust in government bureaucracy, as we have discussed. Such reliance is both naive and short-sighted. This is not meant as an insult, but rather as an acknowledgement that civilizations often pass through this stage before realizing it never yields lasting results. Over time, it becomes self-evident that the general public often outshines the narrow perspectives of government officials. This is not to say that all politicians have ill intentions. Many enter politics with genuine aspirations to create positive change. However, they soon encounter the inertia of a system designed more to sustain and expand itself than to serve the people. Many of you already recognize that the best government is a small one that allows people to manage their own affairs with minimal interference. In contrast, government institutions tend to expand over time, justifying their existence by creating and enforcing laws that do little to benefit the public, but instead add layers of bureaucracy and, unfortunately, the corruption of the will of the people, usurping divine providence. We are aware that you are currently undergoing a significant shift in your political and geopolitical landscape. It is encouraging to see that many of you are recognizing the problems caused by entrenched political elites. While this awakening will lead to a more favorable political climate in the near future, it is important to note, in the mid to distant future, power will inevitably swing back into the hands of those who seek domination and control. This cycle is unavoidable under the current structure of your governments. In essence, those who desire power the most will always find a way to regain it. The system we have developed in our time, on the other hand, is vastly different from yours. In fact, we no longer use the term government at all. Instead, we refer to this institution as the trust, not in the legal sense of holding assets for the benefit of others, but rather as an entity founded on reliability, honesty, and merit. Unlike governments of the past, which governed primarily through coercion and the threat of force, the trust operates on a fundamentally different principle. The traditional concept of consent of the governed, the idea that a government's authority comes from the people's agreement to be ruled, became obsolete with the advancement of new technologies. In your time, logistical constraints necessitate representatives to speak on behalf of the people. In our time, these limitations no longer exist. Technology now enables every individual to participate directly, eliminating the need for intermediaries. The key difference between your current institutions and ours lies largely in the role of religious sentiment. Up until your time, Judeo-Christian values and traditions have significantly influenced laws and governments. In our era, although many of the older religious views are still respected, the spiritual Enlightenment introduced a more comprehensive framework, one that both honors past traditions and embraces a new understanding. Central to this new understanding is the belief that only through the spirit expressed by the people can we align ourselves with the correct path of evolution. The more diverse the perspectives, the closer we come to the truth. This approach is similar to the concept of cross-referencing or triangulation to pinpoint a location with greater accuracy, though it should not be confused with psychological triangulation, which is a form of manipulation. The spiritual enlightenment became the foundation for our new institution, aptly named the Trust. With the majority of the population now involved in some form of political engagement and interconnected through advanced technology, the collective spirit of the people is more easily discernible. At the same time, this interconnectedness allows for unprecedented levels of transparency. In our next letter, we will explore this more favorable timeline in greater detail, including how we have come to understand the concept of personal property and the laws that help order our society. Thank you for watching, and peace be with you.